You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
I'm Travis Currah with Sheldon Jones as we prepare for Week 7 of the 2024 CFL season. 10 games so far have been decided in the final 3 minutes. All of the 2023 season, Sheldon, 19 games. So we're about a third of the way done the season and over halfway to last year's total. That's pretty awesome so far.
Yeah, man. Almost every game has been exciting. There's only been a few stinkers, but when you have certain teams that are getting walked off 3 times in a row, things like that are going to happen. But hopefully, we're on to better days.
Yeah, the Elks are 0-5, and every one of their games has been decided in the final 3 minutes. So they are half of this season's total. Congrats to the Edmonton Elks for providing the rest of the CFL fans with great entertainment, even if it's much to your chagrin. Sheldon, I wanted to look for solace here. I wanted to ask you if I was the jerk in this situation. Sunday, after the Elks game in Edmonton, my wife and I got out to the movies. And it was at 10 p.m. on a Sunday, thinking that we might be in peace for this movie. But there was a group, it was about a dozen people. And when they showed up, in the middle of the trailers, I'm like, oh no. I could tell. And they would not stop talking. Like when the movie started, they all switched rows, continued to talk. The guy and the girl sitting next to my wife were making out. It was full recliners. So when the guy dropped his shoes with the bare feet on the recliners, loud thuds. He dropped his phone. This girl, every time she got a text message, the strobe, the flashlight hit the screen. Like, it was actually one of the most obnoxious movies I've ever attended, and I'm sure that if I go to the 9 a.m. kids movie on Saturday, that the people there would be more well-behaved. So, where I'm going with this is after the movie, I go to the bathroom, and one of the offending guys was also in the bathroom, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it in here, but I have to say something. And I quote, I said, do you always act like that when you go to the movies? And the guy was completely caught off guard. He eventually apologized, but I'm not going to get a refund for my, how much it costs to go to the movies these days. At least the popcorn was good, but my wife was proud of me for saying something. I'm proud of me for saying something, because normally I just laugh this stuff off, but I don't know. Am I just a grumpy curmudgeon now? I kind of feel like that.
No, you're not, but you waited way too long. Like, I think 10 minutes in, you should have yelled out, like, shut up, or something. I would have. And I have done that before. You
have? It probably feels liberating.
It does, but I also don't like confrontation, just like you. So if they say something back, I'm just like,
so we experienced this at the One Dead Man Show Undertaker performance in Philadelphia.
Yes,
now, my wife spoke up, and the girl ended up turning around and flipping her off. So I thought we were going to get into a brawl. But when a guy spoke up, she quieted down in a hurry. So my wife's like, come on, like, you be the one. Whenever she does it, I guess the offending parties aren't as intimidated. So I guess I got to grow into my beard a little bit and try to act like a jerk more often. It might get me places. I'm not sure.
Well, the funny thing is, when you first told me that story, I kind of was thinking that Taylor was going to be the one saying something just because of what happened in Philly, right? So,
well, I gave her one of my M&Ms and I said, throw it. And I could see the wheels turning, and she ended up eating the M&M. I'm like, oh, come on. Then I said, flash your flashlight at them. She said, that's a good idea. But she didn't do that either. I think she was waiting for me to be the one.
Well, at least there wasn't a guy there yelling, "Oh, hell yeah," after every single line in the movie.
Oh, we are wrestling fans, but I will say wrestling fans are the worst. Week 7 starts with a familiar matchup. There's actually no Thursday night game this week. It's a doubleheader on Friday. So the first half of that doubleheader is a rematch of the last game of Week 6. This time the Ottawa REDBLACKS hosting the Edmonton Elks as 2.5-point favorites. The over-under set at 52.5. Now, the more I thought about it, the more I read. Of course, it's going to be the first game for Jarius Jackson as interim head coach and G. Roy Simon as general manager of the Elks. Game plans, back-to-back games between the same two teams, they don't really change that much on a week like this. So I guess it's really going to come down to, I don't know, execution. But I will say that Jarius Jackson, he said he does want to get more packages out there for Trey Ford, even Dakota Prukop, to get them more involved in the game. Those guys, when they come into the game, you're going to expect them to run. But obviously, Trey and Dakota have the ability to pass as well. So I think it would be a great way to keep defenses off balance. And that is not a slight on McLeod Bethel Thompson. He's done great, but Dakota and Trey are more mobile quarterbacks. I don't think that's an offense to MBT at all. But the Elks, through 5 games, haven't utilized it at all. I don't know if that's because they haven't felt the need to stray off the path, because they've been every single game so far, right? It's not like they've been getting crushed by 6 touchdowns and they were trying to find a way to change things up. I don't know if this is the week we see some of those packages, but that's got to be encouraging at least a little bit for Elks fans.
Yeah, like you, I don't know if this is the week, but honestly, really smart of Jarius Jackson even just to mention it, because now Ottawa have to try to game plan for it. They have to try to have their scout defense or their scout offense try to, mimic some extra stuff maybe, so, and that takes away from maybe the regular stuff that they could have been just shoring up on this, 1 or 2 days of practice that they get. So I'm looking forward to it. I like Jarius. I think he's a good coach, and I hope he does well. Everywhere, I think everyone in Edmonton's kind of in an audition stage for next year almost, it seems. I know the season's not over, and I know they say that they're still looking at this season, but they would have to start putting a good run of wins together for that to happen. So, hopefully that does happen for Elks fans, but I'm just interested to see if the team's going to have a little bit more fire, if they're going to have a little bit more wanting to win. I know Chris Jones is a player's coach, and even though, they've lost so many games, and it did seem like the players actually really liked to play for Chris Jones, even when they were losing. So I'm not sure that it's such a change because Chris Jones is gone, but maybe it's just hey, there are consequences. Maybe a little spoiler for who we want to be GM again, but maybe they know that consequences have happened, and players are going to have consequences pretty soon too, I think.
I don't know if I could find that legendary post-game scrum from Kavis Reed, but I will try to link it up on the YouTube video. Literally foaming at the mouth. He's got a towel. There will be consequences. And that's one of those legendary post-game interviews in CFL history. But you're right. Jones seems to have his guys, and maybe those guys are the ones that like playing for him the most. But I've still seen players backing him up. And And this is maybe a big picture conversation, and I'm not the smartest football guy in the world, but I'm going to throw this conversation out there. I feel like since we've started this podcast, there has been, and I'm going back to 2015, there's been sort of a trend with defenses, and Jones is a part of that, where they would almost rush 3 or 4 and drop the rest. And offenses, I think it's fair to say, struggled with that for the most part, especially if these teams had some real horses on the D line that could pressure with only those 3 or 4 players. But this year, it seems like, I don't know, offenses have kind of figured that out. Tyson Philpott and Justin McInnis are both on pace to break the Canadian receiving record. Last week, there were 2 200-yard games. There have been 3 receivers that have done it this year. Justin McInnis on pace to break 2,100 yards, which has never been done in the CFL. I don't know if this is the beginning of a trend or what's happening right now, but right now, if you can't pressure the quarterback, you're not going to have any success. And that seems to be sort of a trend early this season. Several teams not being able to get to the QB.
It's true. And it's interesting because a lot of the teams are stacking the box because we've seen not a lot of success on the running game, as we talked about last episode. So teams are either blitzing or just having so many players near or at the line of scrimmage that it's taking away the running, but it's allowing the quarterbacks to go over top of. And it's crazy. But we have seen quarterbacks getting pressured, like Vernon Adams.
Yeah.
Shea Patterson's got a couple good ones when he's been scrambling. It's the quarterbacks are for the most part being able to handle that with the quick hot routes, and they're getting the ball out of there really quickly. And if I was a defensive coordinator, I'd probably be trying to make it look like I'm going to be pressuring you, but then back off a little bit more now, just because then you may have that quarterback try to do that quick decision, and then you can, get a pick or a knockdown or something. But it's been a very weird CFL season, but I don't think we can argue that it hasn't been really exciting.
Yeah, offenses are making plays, and that goes without saying. I mean, the math says if you have 9 guys back against 5 or 6 receivers, the numbers game shows that you should be able to make a play. Edmonton hasn't been able to do that. We saw that with 8 seconds left against Ottawa and Khalil Pimpleton, where Drew Brown, I don't even know if he was hit at all in in the game on Sunday. He came away probably feeling pretty good after that game. So I guess all that being said, maybe the Chris Jones philosophy doesn't work in the CFL anymore. His last good defense is while he had good defenses in Sask, obviously, but those 2014, 2015 Edmonton teams that were perennial contenders and had Michael Riley, obviously, those defenses worked. But lately, and hey, Jason Shivers comes from the school of Chris Jones. We saw the last half of the last 2 seasons in Sask, and so far this season, it's not going well for him at all either.
No, and because the offenses have been having such success, it's really the good teams that have been having good defensive play. The teams that are winning and have being able to control the time of possession, because then their defense are actually able to be rested, right? But if you're going 2 and out and you're not giving that defense the time to, rest, get some water, get some coaching in, it's not going to be able, you're not going to have an impact on the game. So yeah, it's just been really fun to watch, but I'm sure it's really frustrating for the defensive coordinators.
Yeah, that's key. And I know it sounds basic, but if you give up a touchdown and then your offense is on the field for 2 plays and then the defense is right back out there, I've seen that a lot this year, and that's a good way for the opponents to gain momentum and really start running away with the game a little bit. Other Elks news, defensive line coach Nate O'Neill has stepped away from the team, so that's official. Armando Sewell, Edmonton football legend, Grey Cup champ with the Montreal Alouettes, is now the defensive line coach. Now we sit 25 rows off the field. Armando has been with the team since training camp. He's been wearing a headset. He already has been coaching. And Odell Willis has been on the sideline as well. I don't know if he's been at the road games, but he certainly is at the home games. And hey, if Mondo and Odell can coach like they played, that's, I think, good news for that front in Edmonton.
Yeah, and Mondo's been doing it on a volunteer basis. Like he's not getting paid, apparently.
Wow.
And maybe that's one way for you to circumvent the CFL coaches cap, to have, players or coaches not getting paid. But that just shows dedication, that if you're willing to stick around with a team and help coach it up and do all that without actually getting paid on the books, who knows what's happening. But that just shows that he's committed, and I think he's going to be a great coach. He's often, I know they say sometimes great players don't make great coaches, but I don't think that's the case here. I think he's.
I don't know if that's a CFL thing, because look at Mike O'Shea.
Yeah.
If maybe it feels
true.
like a hockey thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but there have been some great players in the CFL that have made great coaches,
You're right, actually. Like, I'm trying, now that I say that, I'm thinking of all the great players that are coaches now. So yeah, maybe it is a hockey thing, but I think Mondo's going to do great, and hopefully for Elks fans he does. Yeah.
Hopefully he does. As for Ottawa this week, they still have injury issues. And an extra one. Devontae Dedmon did leave the dynamite returner for the REDBLACKS on Sunday, and I guess Wednesday his teammates were carrying him off the field, which is not a good sight at all. I think the return game for Ottawa is a strength, obviously, and they still had success against Edmonton even when Dedmon wasn't in. So they can't take...
That Pimpleton kid is fast.
Yeah, like when you got that kind of speed, whoo. Like that adds a whole new dynamic to Ottawa's, even their offense. Like, to me, it looked like it opened up space for Rhymes, who I think he had his most effective game of the season Sunday against Edmonton. Ackland's out there. He's ready to make the circus catch. Justin Hardy, who has, I think it's 3 100-yard games this season. He has become extremely reliable, but at the same time, extremely underrated. I think he had 2 100-yard games last year. He's already beat that. So another guy that's really racking up the yards for their offense early in the season, and then you add Pimpleton. Suddenly, it's a very dynamic receiving core in Ottawa, and if they have the time for Drew Brown to make the plays happen, they've got the running game with Rock Armstead. They're a pretty dangerous team, and I think that they just need to build some consistency. I think up until last week, they were pretty good at home, and then on the road, they would kind of struggle. They went to Commonwealth Stadium, they balled out, and now they're returning home. If they move to 4-2 on the season, Hamilton's in deep trouble to even be sniffing the playoffs at this point of the year.
In deep trouble. I have a lot of Ticats friends. They're fan friends. I want to be nice here. But
they're used to it. It's 25 years since they've won.
As a Rider fan, I'm used to that too, so I know what it's like.
Yeah. No. Ottawa's DBs continue to have some injuries in that area of their game. Brandon Dandridge, Justin Howell, they've both been ruled out. But I think what we saw on Sunday was that their D-line matched up very well against Edmonton. times in that game, and Lorenzo Malden, who he was down on the field a couple times at Commonwealth, dealing with rib issues. He's listed as available, practiced full Tuesday and Wednesday, so that's good news for the Red Blacks. Both teams, I think especially Edmonton, you just got to tighten stuff up in a back-to-back. Fumbling the ball, missed kicks, stupid penalties after a fumble. You pick the guy up and throw him 5 yards. It's like a pretty nice fumble return, you know? But that does, I think a lot of people will blame that on coaching. Bringing up Saskatchewan, where the past few years, discipline has been the name of the game. I would say that their discipline is better now that their head coach has changed. Edmonton needs to now have better discipline, because if you're losing by 3 or 4 points every game, those dumb penalties add up and are the difference many times in close games.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The penalties, they kill. And sometimes, 40, 50 yards of penalties in one drive. They need to clear that up. But again, a change of coaching, change of scenery. Well, not change of scenery, but change of culture. Hopefully the players buy into Jarius, because he's got them for at least the rest of this year, and they all got to ride together.
Now we go to the second half of the Friday nighter, where the Roughriders are hosting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Normally we don't see this until September, and the Bombers come into this game as 3.5-point favorites, the over-under at 50.5. Now, the Bombers beat the Stamps by 4 last week, and a matchup here is Brady Oliveira versus the Riders front. Oliveira has back-to-back 100-yard games on the ground for the first time in his career, by the way. But the Riders, that's what the stats say on the website. Take it up with them if it's wrong. But, William Stanback had 1.2 yards a carry against the Riders last week. It's not an easy task to run against the Riders. That's a big strength of theirs. So this one might just be a battle right from the get-go if the Bombers want to commit to that run game.
Yeah, and knowing the Bombers, they are going to try. They're going to try to establish that run. But like you said, the Riders' defense has just been shutting every running back down. I don't think they've averaged more than 40 yards a game in any game. So when you take away the strength of a team like that, then now that puts the ball into Zach's hands, and we know what he's done, especially against Riders. And he doesn't have necessarily his 2 biggest weapons, but look at what Ontario Wilson did last week, and look at what the Riders allowed in the BC receivers to do last week. So players like Drew Wiltarski, Ontario Smith, I think they may be able to get a lot of yards. I'm hopeful they're not going to get a lot of touchdowns, because the Riders have been bending but not breaking. But it definitely the biggest match of the game is going to be the running game, but I think it's on both sides, because the Riders need to establish a running game. I say it every week, but they really do. And AJ Ouellette is on the cusp of just having that breakout game. The last 2 games have been really good. He got 2 really short touchdowns last game, but I can just tell that he's ready. But that's going to be tough when you lost Jamarcus Hardrick and you have another, tackle who's starting who hasn't played a game in the CFL yet. So the trenches is going to be huge for this game, like it is always.
Yeah, that's a big factor for the Riders. I think losing Jamarcus Hardrick is more than just what he does. The things that you can measure, the energy he brings to the table. And I think he did that in Winnipeg, and I think it continued in Saskatchewan as well. But yeah, the Riders signing Nick Jones. He started 25 games with Mississippi State. I don't know if... is he going to be starting? Is he practicing with the ones? Or is
No,
it a different
he's
guy?
not.
Different guy?
There's a different guy. I can't remember his name,
Oh,
but
okay.
he's been the backup for Jamarcus Hardrick the whole kind of way, kind of in practice. I can't remember his name though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, Hardrick is out long term. They're saying with a quad injury, which is tough. The CFL is better with guys like Hardrick in the league and on the field. Now, Shea Patterson, he's 1-1. Congrats for being a new dad, by the way. But both games started kind of slow, and had the early interception against BC last week, kind of rebounded after that. Don't want to see that against Winnipeg. No early struggles, at least no early turnovers. I mean, you don't want 2-and-outs, but I'd rather that than an early turnover to the Bombers, right?
No, this is a statement game for the Riders, I think. You showed that you could hang with BC even with your backup quarterback. And I think, as my power rankings would suggest this week, BC's the best team in the league. So they were able to kind of stay in with them, but they need to be able to start quick. They need to get the crowd into it. They need to get it so the crowd is loud when Winnipeg is off the field. Obviously, it's a rivalry game, so we're going to have that already, but it's not going to be the same as Labor Day because, I think they're up to 25,000 tickets sold. Hopefully there's a good walk up. The weather's going to be amazing. It's going to be like 25 degrees at kickoff, I think. But they need to start strong. But plus, they're also wearing these brand new Obsidian jerseys.
I was going to bring that up. Like a lot of times, at least I notice it, whenever they're wearing the retros or something special, it fires the team up, and it should.
Man, the Riders, when they wore the black jerseys in the early 2000s, I think they were like 11-1 or something in them. It was a crazy stat.
It's whenever I go to McMahon Stadium as an opposing fan, and they come out wearing the black, it's like, crap. Like the Stampeders record wearing the black is pretty wild. We'll see if the Riders can establish a good record starting off with that obsidian green, they call it. But this is just a warm-up for Labor Day, really. That's what it's all about. And it's going to be big.
Hopefully Harris will be back for Labor Day.
Yeah, that would be big. Can they pressure Zach as much as they pressured VA? I think that was a surprising part of the BC-Saskatchewan game, that the D-line was able to get on VA. Yeah, he made the plays. Yeah, Justin McInnes had almost 250 yards receiving. But at times, the Bomber O-line has really struggled. So again, I know it's not exciting, but that's another trench matchup to watch. Not only can Oliveira move the ball on the ground, but can they protect Zach, who did miss a game because he took a nasty, clean, but thunderous hit that knocked him out for a game. We didn't see much Streveler, I thought, against Calgary. Maybe the Bombers are going to want to establish some of that physicality and get him out there as well. Adam Bighill is on the cusp of another milestone. It seems like some of these guys that step onto the field every game, they have a chance at moving up some sort of leaderboard. I left the blanks on the prep sheet because I wanted you to guess. His next sack will be his 50th. And when Adam Bighill does that, I'm not saying it's this week, but he would join two players to be the only players in CFL history to have 500 tackles and 50 sacks. Do you have a guess for either one of those players? One of them is quite recent, I will say, recently retired.
Stop. Charleston Hughes.
He's one.
And Joe Montford.
Good guess. The other one is Willie Pless.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive for a D lineman to have the 500 tackles, I think, to his resume. So, hey, that's pretty good company to be in for Adam Bighill, who I would like to see once, and this comes from me being a wrestling fan. Like, for example, Rey Mysterio is a Hall of Famer. Can Adam Bighill headline, a Hall of Fame class while still playing? Come on. I know it's cheesy, but I love that kind of stuff.
That would be hilarious. They could just bring him in for just short yardage plays where he can just lawn dart over top of the line of scrimmage like he usually does.
The classic Adam Bighill. I actually met him. It was after the final game at Taylor Field. Man, I was quite frustrated after that game. But anyway.
Tell me about it.
But he was really cool. He came out of the dressing room, was talking with fans, and I got a mini football that talks about the final game at Taylor Field, BC Lions, Saskatchewan Roughriders, and he signed that for me. So Adam Bighill, he's a great CFL ambassador, and it's been great to see what he's been able to do in his career. Bombers, Riders, Friday Night Football in Regina. There's gonna
Why'd
be.
You bring that up? Man,
oh, the fight! Are you rattled?
That game. Just so.
Hey,
we can move on, but I'm just
Chris Jones moment, right?
Yeah, we could do a whole show on how rattled I am about that game.
All right. It was funny. Like, that goes to show just how little Chris Jones cared about the fans. You'd think that the final game at Taylor Field, if any of them, that Durant would be able to finish that game and try to get a win, but no. Nope. That's the stubbornness, and hey, I can be stubborn too, so I guess I can respect that.
Enjoy unemployment.
Hey, he's gonna be in the Hammer. This game between the Ticats and the Argos, another sort of Labor Day preview, but the Argos go to the Hammer as 2.5-point favorites. The over-under at 52.5.
Okay, stop. How is Winnipeg a 3.5 favorite going into Regina, and the Argos are only a 2-point favorite going into Hamilton?
I see sort of a rising sentiment here that people believe that the Ticats are going to get their first win of the season.
I don't.
I'm going to try my best not to make definitive statements on games anymore because of what happened last week, but I guess it could happen. Cameron Dukes got the win last week, and that's what matters. He didn't turn the ball over. That also matters. But didn't he throw for less than 150 yards? The Argos had a defensive touchdown. They had a special teams touchdown. But it is the ultimate team game. It all contributes. So the Ticats got to make sure that they don't give up touchdowns in those two phases of the game.
But I know they were playing Montreal, and Cody got hurt, but they were still playing Montreal. They were still playing the defense of Montreal. So the defense of Montreal is a lot better, I think we could all agree, than the defense of Hamilton, right?
Ticat fans will tell you that, man.
Exactly. That's just weird to me. Maybe that means a lot of people are putting money on Hamilton, and that's raising it up. I don't know, but and it's possible. Teams are going to end their losing skids, and sometimes it could be a trap game for Toronto, but that's just interesting to me. I think that's easy money on the Argos covering 2 points.
That's pretty juicy. If you want to put money down on this, but Hamilton hasn't beaten Toronto in 23 months.
Disclaimer, do not take my advice for gambling. Sorry.
The Hammer, or the Ticats, have not beaten Toronto in 23 months. So it's a 6-game winning streak for the Argos. You want to talk about timelines? Wait till the BC Calgary stat. But Bo Mitchell, I know this is weird because both him and McLeod Bethel Thompson, I think, aren't playing so bad. But they have no wins.
Nice. Bo is playing almost nice. He's got a 68% completion right now.
That's almost nice.
Almost.
But 4 straight games with 2 touchdown passes, 300 yards in 4 of the team's first 5 games. And the game where he didn't have 300 yards, I think it was 295. So, I mean, he's doing okay. And we can talk about some of the drop passes from number 12. One of the interceptions is directly attributed to number 12. So he's doing all right. In this game, I think if you're able to limit the pressure that the Argos are throwing at you, you have a chance to, carve them up and get some yards through the air. But getting that time is difficult. And the Ticats are going to have to use James Butler, whether it's in the receiving game or the rushing game, and running against the Argos, just like the Riders, is difficult. The Riders giving up 3.5 yards per carry. The Argos 3.9 yards per carry. The only teams in the CFL to have a sub 4 yard average against on the run. So if number 12 can do his job and Shamar Bridges continues his pace, he's on pace to have the best rookie receiving season in CFL history, at least the best since Darrell Walker when he came onto the scene for Edmonton. But like we talked about earlier, I've noticed this with the Ticats, just not very consistent. They'll kind of do it in bunches where they go down, 2 and out, another touchdown, and then later in the game they kind of fight back.
Yeah.
But they need to go punch for punch with the Argos, and hopefully some combos in there for the Ticats if they want to get ahead and get that first win of the year.
Yeah, a lot like Edmonton. Hamilton's offense is doing the job, I would say. Edmonton's offense is doing the job, but their defense is letting them down, and so is Hamilton's. And again, I think it's the same. Like if I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm sure if we looked at the games, Hamilton probably hasn't won any of the games they've played in the time of possession. And I think it's just their defenses are getting tired. And like you said, their offense, while it's being effective, is streaky. And so a lot of times it's not giving the defense the time to rest, like I was talking about before. So Bo is playing well. I think Hamilton fans should be very happy with the way that Bo is playing, because compared to last year and the last year in Calgary, he's very close, if not almost there, to being old Bo, I would say. And if the defense can just make some plays, get some turnovers, get some pressure, then Hamilton, they're not a bad team. Their record shows that they're a bad team. Yeah,
those teams that Bo was winning with all the time were complete teams. Their special teams was unreal, their defense was unreal, and that goes to show why they were winning so many times. I mean, you talk about time of possession, the Argos were close to having the ball for 38 minutes against the Alouettes. Their running game with Adeboboye, McMahon, and Kadeem Carey, they're just running over teams right now. And
Hamilton has been they've been ran over against.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Now, at defensive line, the Argos have some of the best players in the CFL there, and Jake Serezna and Flo Arimalade. Now, Serezna missed last week. He's been limited at practice. Flo has been out for a couple weeks. He's limited in practice as well. If those guys can get back on the field, that's a massive addition for the Double Blue. They have also signed CFL veteran defensive lineman Woody Barron, who spent about 6 years in the CFL, half with Montreal, half with BC. I don't know if that tells you that maybe they've got some D linemen. They're going to be out for a little bit here, but Woody Barron can absolutely come in and contribute right off the bat. But does this feel like jobs are on the line here for the Ticats as well. If they have another poor defensive performance, I kind of wonder if that's on the horizon. But much like Edmonton coming off a bye week, the Ticats no changes during the bye on that front. I don't know if they'll do it after a game here against Toronto, but it's in the conversation, and I think there is some pressure from Tiger Town fans.
Yeah, if they get another big loss where they give up, 30 or 40 points, I could see some changes happening, like Scott Milanovic kept the coordinators from last year, I believe. And I don't know if that was out of necessity with the coach's cap or if it was that he just didn't have anybody else he wanted to do. Rumor was if he came to Saskatchewan, that's what he was going to do too. So I'm not sure if that's just what he wanted to do, but yeah, if you're Hamilton's defensive coordinator, you're on the hot seat right now.
Yeah, I think Mark Washington needs to get that unit going in a hurry, man, and it's a tough task against a physical team like Toronto.
But like we've talked about before, I think teams have enough tape on Cameron Dukes now where they are able to throw some more stuff at him and see how he reacts, maybe telegraph some of his plays where he's going. So I don't think this is the week that it's going to happen in Hamilton, but like Edmonton, I do think they're close. I think they just need a few plays to go their way, and they will be able to start winning some games. But I think Edmonton's closer, and I think hopefully Hamilton, if they can keep it tight into the fourth quarter, they certainly have a chance to be able to close it out. But if they don't start hot and they go down, we're looking next week for that first win possibly.
And somebody's got to get their first win if Edmonton also loses to Ottawa.
Oh yeah, it's the toilet bowl next week if that happens.
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
The Sunday nighter has the Calgary Stampeders home to the BC Lions. Now the Lions are 4.5-point favorites here, and let's see. Oh yeah, it's Wally Buono night. You see the bobblehead over my left shoulder. Legendary coach in CFL history with both Calgary and BC, so it's fitting that this is Wally Buono night at McMahon. He coached the Stamps for 13 years. He holds the franchise record for most games coached with Calgary, most wins, 3 Grey Cups, 12 playoff victories, and that's just what he did in Calgary before going on to BC and winning a couple more Grey Cups there and probably a couple hundred more games as well. The Buono-Saskatchewan rivalry is one of my favorites in history because he played or coached for 2 Western opponents, and he was the single reason that the east side at Taylor Field had to stop selling cans of beer for a few years.
Yep.
They had to go to cups because of Wally Buono and the BC Lions going onto the field, not dealing with those crazy East Side fans, Sheldon Jones included.
Yeah, I never chucked a can, but if Wally would have stayed off the field, like literally every waking moment of the games, he was 5 yards onto the field, it seemed. He'd never get a penalty for it. I love Wally Buono, don't get me wrong. Even when he stopped coaching in BC and he would come as the general manager, they would sit like literally right above us in section 27. Yeah. That's where the visitor GM box was. So we would turn around and yell Wally at him and he'd smile and wave. He is good about it. But like top 2 chants in Taylor Field history are for Wally and for Henry. And okay, at least I'm happy about Taylor Field now after you're making me really mad about it before.
Wally is also, I think, one of the nicest guys ever. And I had the chance of meeting him at the 2018 2018 Grey Cup. Yeah, the one in Edmonton. Calgary won. And Buono, he was in the convention center, and my wife and I, we went to meet him and like asking our names and things like that. And I don't know, I always get blown away when, I don't know, somebody of that stature, cares enough to ask a little thing like that. And I think Wally is, one of the best figures in CFL history for sure.
Yeah, and isn't like Mark Henry.
Deep cut. Now, two perfect kickers going head to head. A combined 37 for 37 on field goals between Paredes and White. Now, Sean White's next field goal will be his 40th. I don't know. Can you talk about this without jinxing? Will he beat Lewis Ward's 69 straight field goals, which would be almost a tragedy, but also awesome at the same time? Like the football and the kicking that White is putting out there, game after game after game, and Paredes for that matter. Hey, field goals aren't exciting, but well, I guess they can be.
They can be. Yeah.
When you're on the winning side, a field goal is great. But man, these guys are still at the top of their game, right?
Mm-hmm. And one of them's like ready to, go become a firefighter. So it's pretty interesting.
I think he's doing it at the same time.
Yeah, I know he's already doing it. Yeah, I'm not a Rene Paredes guy, but I respect his game. But I love Sean White. I was watching CFL Wired a couple weeks ago, and they had White mic'd up. They had the kickers mic'd up for this game, and that was awesome. Like, you don't usually see that, but he's just crushing a can of Coke and eating some fruit snacks on the bench right before.
Hey, was it a Diet Coke or a Coke?
No, it was regular.
Nice. I thought you gained another becoming your favorite guy. Like you would buy a jersey if it was a Diet Coke, probably.
Well, people who drink Diet Coke are superior, so of course. Speaking of Diet Coke, flats of 24 were on sale at Safeway this week.
You're still paying off the $15 American Diet Cokes you were buying in Philadelphia.
That's accurate. That is accurate.
And now Calgary has not, listen to this stat, beaten the BC Lions at McMahon Stadium since 2019. Sheldon, that was approximately 29 years ago. I had no gray in my beard in 2019. What happened?
Yeah, that's a crazy stat because Calgary is notoriously a really good home team. So it's crazy that BC hasn't won there, but BC's also been really good since 2019, I would say. So makes sense.
There's probably a moment where,
other than the one Claybrooks year, that's weird that BC was able to win during the Claybrooks year.
I feel like I better verify this stat. I didn't make it up. I swore I read it. Okay, let's do a quick search and see if I can verify this. Calgary's last home win against BC came June 29th, 2019. It's only 4 games, but the years add up, and that's pretty wild. Now, can the Calgary Stampeders stop Justin McInnes? And if they can stop Justin McInnes, can they stop Alexander Hollins? Like that's the question, right? Justin McInnes already has the most receiving yards he's ever had in a CFL season by 35 yards, and he's played 6 games. The pace is wild.
Jeremy O'Day is such a terrible GM for letting that
go. That was a pretty good eye roll. I got it perfectly on YouTube as well, so thanks for doing that.
Good. Both
Justin McInnes and Tyson Philpott, I mentioned it earlier, on track to break the Canadian receiving record set by Terry Evanson in 1967 with 1,662 yards. That is wild. The record has stood for that long, and it could be broken by two players in the same year. That's pretty insane to me. Vernon Adams Jr., it's his 100th career CFL game. He's had 58 starts, and so far, he's put it all together on track for that elusive MOP season. And on defense, the BC Lions could be welcoming back veteran linebacker TJ Lee, who had an Achilles injury in the West Final last year, along with receiver Keon Hatcher. They're expecting Keon Hatcher to return after the bye, but TJ Lee could play on Sunday. That's a game-breaking addition to your defense. So the Lions just continue to improve.
They do, but they'll have to see if he's got some rust to knock off.
Yeah.
He might be a target for Calgary to go after. But as long as it's a deep ball, there's no chance of Jake Maier making a completion. So there's that.
So is it Diedrich time? 5.7 yards a carry. He ran wild on Winnipeg at times. Maybe that's the key to success for the Calgary Stampeders. And can they get Reggie Begelton going, who surprisingly is actually third on his team in receiving? Last year, he was the reliable guy, the guy that Jake would always look to on second down. But I'd say the receiving core in Calgary, so far, the addition of Cam Eccles, the Canadians are playing well. Markin Michel, I think, is having a quietly great season for the Stampeders. Can they get 84 Reggie Begelton going in this game? But yeah, it's on Jake to establish, I think, some consistency. When the season started, he looked great. He looked like a completely different guy from last year. But as with Cameron Dukes, I'm not saying... teams already have film on Jake, but kind of returning to the mean, the average a little bit. Not the MOP level and not the Cleo Lemon level. Jake somewhere in the middle. But hey, if they want to hang with the best team in the West, a lot is going to have to do with his decision-making, right?
If Dave Dickinson called a Marcel Belfay offense, Jake Maier would be an MOP, I think. Because he's really accurate on the short to medium passes.
Yeah.
He's hitting his screens. He's hitting his crossers. It's just, Dave Dickinson loves the big play. He loves to set the tone with it early, especially when he's on the road. I know they're at home but he always loves to throw like a deep ball in the first two series. But Jake is just not being consistently accurate. And even when he's getting pressured, he's throwing at players' feet. He's throwing 2 feet above them. Like, he needs to settle down. He needs to just go back to basics, and they need to call like a simplified game plan for him. Because if they did that, I think they do have the potential to be a very good team and very good offensively.
Now, I know we've already talked about the struggles of Edmonton's defense, of Hamilton's defense, but there's one defense that's giving up more yards a game than both of those teams. You guessed it. It's the Calgary Stampeders, 405.6 yards given up a game. On the ground, 6.2 yards a carry. The only team above 5.5, above 6 yards a carry. And that is a team with Micah Awe and with Cameron Judge. They're giving up 8.4 yards on average a play on first down. So if a team's working in 2nd and 2, 2nd and 1 all night long, that's a tough recipe to win games. And they're giving up 8.42 yards a play. That is the worst mark in the CFL. Now, maybe they are a little bit of the bend, don't break defense we talk about because they have been able to force turnovers. Trey Roberson did have 2 interceptions last week, but I feel like we're not really talking about how much yardage that the Stampeder defense has been giving up. But combine that with the yards that the BC offense has been gaining, the only team over 400 yards a game, 428.7 yards a game. This sounds like a recipe for them to get into a bit of a track meet with the Lion or the Stamps, and I don't know if the Stamps want that.
No, I don't think they have the capability to go shot for shot with BC. But at the same time, a lot of times when we have matchups like this where we have the best against the worst in something, it's not that blowout that we think it's going to be, right? And it's almost disappointing. It'll become like a defensive game, and like we think it's going to be like a 50-51 game, but I do think that just the way that BC is playing and the amount of yards that like you said, 8.2 yards on first down, that's nuts.
That is. Like that's
it's unsustainable. Like how have they even won any games, right? like it's the wrong team to come in when you're playing that way. But at the same time, it's quite the challenge for them, and Dave Dickens is not a bad coach. So maybe he's going to have his players hyped up for that. He should. And it's up to them to kind of prove that why they're getting paid what they're getting paid.
Hey, with all that being said, the BC Lions have given up the second most offensive touchdowns in the CFL. That is second to Edmonton, and it's only by 1 touchdown. So maybe this could be a good game for both quarterbacks, and we get into a bit of a track meet here and have some fun Sunday night football under that 30-degree heat. I'm really thinking about going, but the $5 beers pre-kickoff might not be the best idea on a hot day like that.
Well, you'll sweat it out before it even hits you.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I also did read that they do have the loaded baked potatoes at McMahon Stadium. They were just in a different location. So I was told previously that they may be gone, but you might just have to go for a walk at the old horseshoe-shaped McMahon Stadium to find a pulled pork parfait and a loaded baked. I will champion the food options at McMahon Stadium. I have no shame on that, man.
They have to have one good thing about their stadium.
I kind of want to watch a game. They've kind of got a mini pill country in Calgary. I think it's called the Corral. And I think it's $30. And you stand there. But am I too old for that? I am concerned on that part.
Just pretend you're Grey Cup Trav standing at Spirit of Edmonton for hours on end, listening to
That's true.
Whatever band it is that does the wall.
Now they no longer take part in the Spirit of Edmonton, so I'm really glad that.
What?
They changed their band last year in Hamilton, a new band. So I hear they're good, but I will not give them any free publicity until I've seen them with my own eyes. All right, we'll see them in Vancouver. For the Grey Cup. My fantasy lineup, I have made sure to save it, but go through yours first.
So I'm expecting Edmonton to win, so I do have Cloud Bella-Thompson as my quarterback. It's kind of a value pick because he's not in the upper tier of them. And then so running backs, I have Dedrick Mills and Kadeem Carey, just because of, I just think they're going to put up a ton of yards. Justin McInnes, Eugene Lewis. Justin McInnes is going to put up a ton of yards. Hopefully can double dip with McLeod for Eugene Lewis. And then my flex pick is Ontario Smith, just because the Riders will give up a lot of yards to somebody, and so I hope it's him. And then defense, I'm taking the BC Lions. Maybe I'm going to change that, though, now after talking to you about this game. But currently, I do have a little bit of money left, so maybe I can switch that out.
All right, so I've got the Argos defense. I've got Drew Brown as my quarterback. I've got my running backs as AJ Ouellette and Kadeem Carey. My receivers, Alexander Hollins and Justin Hardy. And I actually have Jalen Philpott of the Calgary Stampeders. He had some nice plays for them last week against Winnipeg. I see him getting more and more involved. It's a risk, I admit, but I got $100 left in my budget, and I have verified it is saved. So I should have more than 25 points this week.
That's good.
You want to talk about rattled? That's me in the stands at Commonwealth.
I know what it's like to be rattled.
Yeah, it was the absolute worst. Okay. Week 7 of the CFL season is here. The Ottawa REDBLACKS hosting the Edmonton Elks, and the REDBLACKS are 2.5-point favorites. The Bombers heading to Regina, where the road team is 3.5-point favorites. The Argos heading to Hamilton, where the road team also favorites 2.5 points, and the Calgary Stampeders hosting the BC Lions, another instance where the road team are favorites by 4.5 points. I am taking Ottawa. I'm taking Toronto. I am taking BC. And I will take Saskatchewan. Who are you taking in week 7, Sheldon?
Edmonton, Toronto, BC, and Saskatchewan.
This is going to be a fun week of CFL football. I cannot wait to watch these games. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out on your favorite podcatcher. We are nearing 500 subscribers on YouTube, so like, comment there as well, and you can support the show on Patreon. I'm Travis Currah. He's Sheldon Jones. Have a safe, fun time at the CFL games this weekend.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.